Hi everyone. Well, I thought I'd just give you a view from my window today before I start filming this sky tutorial. This is where I live. This is Umber. It's a old mining village. It's in a lovely low valley and a lot of greenery around, as you can see. And these are all the old terraced houses where the miners lived originally. And here's a lovely farm right on the hilltop up there. It's a nice walk up there, and then over to the left you walk along what's actually, see that road? It's the Roman road. Okay, so that's just to give you a bit of context. Today I'm going to paint a sky scene. A lot of people have been asking for a sky scene the last few weeks, and so I'm going to do a general sky scene. It's a two-part sky. Sorry about this, I just dropped something. It's a two-part sky. So I'm going to be painting it and drying it and then carrying on. Basically I'm going to paint this scene here. This one. So it's a very stormy sky with light and dark contrast. Okay. The brushes I'm going to use are these. Two flat brushes. One is about 1.5 inches and one is about 1 inch. Then a round brush about a size 3. And a round brush about a size 6. I just use synthetic brushes, and these are quite good value ones. My paper is cold pressed paper. This is a 1/4 imperial sheet. It's Saunders Waterford, £90. Also in America they use 200 GSM for that, £90 UK, 200 GSM USA. I stretched it overnight using gummed tape, you know, the tape that you lick to moisten, and it's totally dry then in the morning, and it's on a 9mm board, plywood board, okay, so it won't bend. And then when it's dry I've put masking tape around about 1/4 inch over on the white of the paper to again help the water not seep under the tape. I just am very precautious, take a lot of precautions about painting wet into wet skies. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'll just get the camera on the stand and I'll begin. So the thing to consider with skies is if you want a lot of drama, you know, you need a lot of contrast. And just by sort of looking at your scene with less detail helps, you know. So for example, if you're looking at this one, okay, it might help you even more to make a black and white photograph out of it. So if you can do that in Adobe or do it using your camera or your app on your phone, whatever, that helps. So then you're only looking at lights and darks. That's one less thing to worry about then. You haven't got to worry about the colour. I've done it in this one. I've taken all the colour out of that cloud scene. So now all I've got is a mixture of lights, whites, greys, and darks, blacks. Okay. So, and also if I tip it upside down, it's very clear then, isn't it, how dark that shadow is, you know, behind that puff of white cloud, and how dark the shadow is in there. And then the edges of the shadow are going from grey softly into the white. But where the dark butts up against the white there, we've got a hard, crisp edge. So clouds are good for studying edges. And in this one I did about a year ago, the edge of the white against the blue is quite hard compared to the edge where the grey-blue shadow goes into the white of the fluffy cloud. That's quite a soft transition. There's quite a lot of blend in there, where there's no blend in here. Okay, so these are the things to be aware of. Are your edges going to be soft or are they going to be hard? And I'll show you how to achieve those in this demonstration. So first of all, I'm going to wet the whole sheet with clear water. So I'm using my big brush for this. You could use a mop brush as well. You know, those are really big, fat, round brushes. That will do. But as I say, flat brushes are fine for this as well. I'm putting a lot of water on because I want this paper to stay moist while I do all my sky work. I don't want it drying out, because if it dries out then the edges of my clouds will be hard, or maybe harder than I want them in the early stages. So water is your friend. It helps you correct more easily, because it's always easier to lift out some colour from moist paper than trying to lift it out from dry paper. So I'm consciously doing the corners and the edges more frequently than the centre, because they dry out more quickly. The centre stays moist because of course it's surrounded by moisture, isn't it? Okay, so if I just tip that now, can you see that sheen there from the light? That's the moisture we want. Okay, it's moist all over, but it's not soaking wet. It's not running with water. So before I go in, let's just look at the colours here. So I've got a bit of yellow in the background, then I've got some blues and I've got some greys. So the colours I am actually going to use are, if you want to write them down, Winsor Yellow, Raw Umber, Burnt Umber, and French Ultramarine Blue. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to put a very pale wash of Winsor Yellow over the sky. I'm adding quite a lot of water to dilute that down. I've got a nice big mixing area here in this Frank Webb palette. Okay, so I'm going to add this yellow to my wet paper. I just want to add a little bit of warmth in places to this sheet of paper. So that's all I'm doing for now. It will dry a lot paler as well. Watercolour always dries paler than when you see it wet. I haven't made it all equal. As you can see, it's a little bit irregular, my application. And I'm also going to tip it. And that will soften, sorry about the dogs, that will soften my application nicely. And I'm going to leave that to dry naturally. I recommend you leave yours to dry naturally. It'll probably take about an hour or two, depending on where you are. I'm going to use a hairdryer just to speed up for this video. So leaving that flat, let it dry. I'll be back in the next clip. Right, so before I start doing the sky, I've got to wet the whole sheet again with clear water. So I'm going to get my big brush, as I used before, and this time just very gently glide on water. I'm not using any scrubbing action. I'm just letting, if you see I'm holding the brush like that, letting the head with all the hairs just rest on the paper, and I'm just dragging it, dragging it across like that, very effortlessly, so that this water will just glide on, and then it won't disturb the yellow wash underneath, and then we can paint our browns and greys and blues with impunity. Okay, there won't be any problem at all. This is to show you that you can re-wet a watercolour and rework it. I'm just making sure I haven't left any gaps in between my strokes. And keep tilting your head to a light source to see if the paper has got a shine all over it, because that's what you need to do this technique. Right, so I've put water all over the paper now with a minimal of scrubbing, the minimal disturbance to the previous yellow wash. If I just show you now how it's looking, see there's a shine all over it now. Okay, I'm just going to tip it to one corner and see if any beads of water run off in my hand. There's one coming there, see that? So I'll just let that run off, and any more that want to come off right now. Just take those extra beads off and then tip your board back and just redistribute, share it out, tip it this way and that way, and then it won't have any surface water sitting on there, because surface water will make it hard for the paint I'm going to put on to sink in. surface water will not give me as much control as a sheet of paper that's had just a half a minute more time for the water to sink in. And I'm going to give it that half a minute now and show you. You can start to see, hopefully, slight dimpling, little tiny pinpricks, you know, in the paper. You can see the tooth of the paper showing through where the water is now, you know, sinking in and isn't so much sitting on the surface. It's literally just a matter of, you know, half a minute perhaps. And while I'm doing that, I'm still rotating the board around, you know, to make sure my corners and the edges haven't dried out too much, because they always dry out first. Okay, so that's why I'm doing that. Now I'm going to try and show you how I proceed. Because the paler colours will be underneath the darker colours, I'm going to put the paler colours on first. So the palest colour on my palette there is this brown. Then the next one is that blue. Then there's that grey, and then there's that black. Okay, so I'm just going to pick up this grey colour and put it in sort of roughly where I can see it on my photo. See, there's a bit of it there, and a bit of it there, and some there. And again, it doesn't have to be exactly the same, you know, position. All I want is some variety of placement and some repetition of placement. So this brown, you know, appears here and there in the painting. Okay, so the next colour now to go on is the softer grey, this grey here. So let's put some of that on. Now I'm seeing grey sort of there, the grey there, and a paler bit there. So let's try that. Let's just put it on, because we'll be tipping the board in a minute anyway, and things will be moving around. And as I say, there's no, you know, formula for this. That's what art is. It's not formulaic. You know, x plus y doesn't always equal x plus y doesn't always equal z. You just go in the general direction and hope for an approximation, and that's what makes art and craft. With craft, there tends to be more predictability. Now, very quickly, I want to put this blue on, this palish blue, and that's sort of up around there somewhere. Okay, up around there. There's a bit of a repeat of it there, and a little bit over there, say. Now that's looking like it's starting to dry out already in the corner. So what I'm going to do now is pick the board up and let it tip. Tip this way, tip that way. See, it's all softening now and travelling beautifully across the paper. That's what I want. Okay, tip it each way, north, south, east, west. And see, already we're getting a lot of softening going on and a lot of fusion of different colours. And it's still moist. As you can see, there's a sheen all over the board still. Okay, right, so that's generally what we've got. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to use some tissue paper to lift out some white clouds. Okay, so I'm just going to twist the paper like that in a rough sort of twist, and just press the paper, press it and twist it like that, and lift out some white dry areas which can act as cloud shapes. Okay, so I'll lift out some more down here. And by pressing this clean, dry white tissue into the surface, you're picking up colour, and you're also making obstacles. You're making pale spaces that are dry, where my next wash, which will be very dark, will not be able to travel. Okay, so you're creating, you know, some obstacles, and there'll be a strong contrast, as you'll soon see. So this puddle, I feel, needs to be a bit bigger, so I'm going to add more French ultramarine blue and more burnt umber to it, make it very very strong and much more amount of it. Okay, and I'm going to paint this in now into where I saw those very strong darks in the sky, and getting them on as quickly as I can, and a few little breaks and anchors. I'm working quickly because I don't want the paper to dry too fast and leave me with too many hard edges. I've run out, so I'm going to have to mix up some more pretty quickly. There's nothing worse than running out, you know, part way through doing a sky. So it just shows you, you know, how much pigment you need. Okay, a lot of pigment. You can't do this if you're going to stint on paint. It just won't work. You need an awful lot of paint there. Okay. Really want to darken that corner. Okay, let's see what happens now. So I'm going to tilt and let that have its head. Just let it go. Let it go. And I'm going to tilt my board, turn it. See, it's all softening and we're getting some gorgeous shapes that you could never have planned. Let it have its head, let it run, let it run, let it run. And let's try it over this way again now. See what's happening there, okay? You need to be brave to do this, and this is playtime. You know, don't forget now, we are learning, okay? We're not aiming for a perfect, you know, painting. I mean, if it turns out perfect, great. Well, what is perfect? You know, we beat ourselves up on what perfect is. Right, so I'm going to just take another piece of tissue, and I feel now that if I press this in, I can unify some of the clouds that I feel might look a bit disjointed or separate from the other clouds. I feel I need to press this in, and you can get different effects. And if I just zoom out a little bit again, see there? I think I'm going to add a bit of a twisted thing, and have some long thin clouds as well. So, and then some repeats of them elsewhere in the sky. Okay, and then let's just finally go in with a little bit more of the dark again. As you can see, the painting is still moist in places. I want a sort of diagonal thrust of this dark coming up from the bottom right hand side. Again, don't be afraid. It might look very dark right now, but in a few seconds, as you'll see, it'll become a lot paler because it'll fuse with more water on the painting, you see? It's becoming paler already. So let it dribble, let it run, and it won't run where you've done those pressings of white tissue paper to get those crisp cloud shapes, okay? So we got a bit more atmosphere down here now. This is a bit disjointed, so I'm just add some more dark there in a second. Let's just have a few more moody streaky runs like that going on. Tip them back the same way. You can see you've got to give it time, you know, to run, okay? And it does all this like wiggly stuff, you know. And sometimes you might think, well, actually, my sky looks better that way. You know, you might start off painting it this way, but it might look better upside down.
So overall, I feel like I need to sort of kill that area there because it's a bit sort of gappy, and you can do that while it's still moist. Okay. Now, what I'd like to do, just for pure experimentation, is I'm going to flood in some pure French Ultramarine Blue. I'm just going to clean my palette off. Really rinse my brush very well. And again, I can only do this while, you know, the painting is moist. So let's get some blue in here, in one third of the painting, okay? So about a third of it. So let's drop some in amongst those clouds there. I'll have it come in from the top right hand corner, I think. And letting it definitely, you know, cascade, you know, right through the painting. So I've put quite a bit of pigment and moisture on there. So let's see what happens now. See, all the moisture still in the painting, it's all moist. This is why I recommend, cotton rag paper, because cotton rag holds an awful lot more paper than, say, Bockinford. Bockinford is made from wood pulp, not cotton rag, and it just doesn't stay wet enough for me. Cotton rag papers always do stay much wetter than wood papers. Okay, so any movement you do, just watch and see where the paint is running and streaking. Okay, now I'm a lot happier with that than I was earlier on, because I like the contrast of the blue. Okay, overall now, I feel like I want to soften some of the clouds in there. So what I'll do is I'll just take a moist brush. This is a flat brush that I've wet, and then I've flicked it really hard by the end of the handle like that. And now I'm just going to rub it in to part of the cloud like that, and then very gently pick up some of that colour in the dark of the sky and just encourage it to come up into the cloud slightly. See, it's coming in, it's breaking in, see, it's breaking in there, breaking in, see that? And it's giving a bit of shadow on the bottom of the cloud, because they generally do have, don't they, like this one, shadow on the base, paler at the top. Okay, so but now I've got a hard line there. So what I need to do is rinse my brush again, so it's nice and clean, flick it really hard, and then moisten a bit above that hard line, and then wipe that out. And this is how you get very soft gradations up into your clouds. You've got to be that fussy. If I zoom out now, so I've softened the base of that a bit. Let's do this one over here. So I've got hard edges all around. They're nice and ragged, but they're a bit too cut out. So I've got a clean brush which I've flicked. It's got moisture in it. Don't wipe it on a flannel, because then it will be too dry. You need to deposit some small amount of water, as I'm doing here, just a little way away from the edge you will drag up in a second. Just moisten it very carefully. So you've put a smidgen of water, smidgen of moisture inside that cloud base. Now start touching in, as I'm doing, and coaxing up, as you can see, coaxing up now some of the grey that is sitting just outside the edge of that cloud. And then press your brush, wiggle it and bring it in. So you brought in some of that grey to your cloud, and you've softened all of the bottom edge. And as you can see, it's creeping and creeping and creeping, isn't it? Look, see? It's going from there to there seamlessly, but we've still got a crispy hard edge at the top.
You could also pick up a little bit more grey, you know, and maybe add, you know, a few little tumps like that in your cloud, right? From which the top part of the fluffy cloud will emerge. So you can add a bit of texture like that, right? Now that again, I feel could be softened. So I'll just moisten my brush again, rinse my brush again, flick it really hard, and then soften this lot away, see? Soften that up. So you've got a slightly harder one at the bottom, but where this shadow grey is coming up now into the peak of the white fluffy cloud, it's softer. And so, see, there's your softened cloud there. And what you can do with clouds as well is you can have, you know, cirrus, breakaway. So, like horses' tails. So I'm going to rinse my flat brush very well again. Now this time I am going to dry it on a flannel. I've rinsed it, I'm drying it. And make sure when you dry it that you have it in its shape like that. You know, don't have it twisted like that. That's no good, okay, for what we want to do. Flatten it like a scissors with your fingers, right? And then I'm going to hold it by the fat bit of the ferrule there, okay, there. This is the ferrule, by the fat bit, and I'm going to hold it quite low, right? And I'm going to try and make some horses' tails. So I'm just going to go flick. Then wipe that colour off your brush, because if you go back in now, you'll have a nice grey in the cloud. So I'm going to clean brush each time. Let's go, okay, and even rinse it, wash off the grey, then wipe your brush again. Okay, let's have a few coming from here, and then I'm going to stop because I don't want it to look too stylised. So let's have some. Just I want to suggest the wind coming from the left hand side. So I've rinsed my brush, drag again, okay, and I think I'm going to stop there because otherwise it can get overly fussy. Okay, maybe one more. Yeah, right there. Okay, and I think I'm going to stop there because we've done enough sort of techniques of wet into wet, loosening. You can see how you can bring the shadow part into a fluffy cloud while keeping the crisp top. You can see all the beautiful granulation that's happening in this paper because it's cold pressed, also known as knot. It's got a tooth to it, so the paint lies, the grains of paint lie in the pockets of the surface of the paper, which has been run through felts in the production process, and those felts give it dimples. Then we've tried adding, you know, pure colour with the French Ultramarine Blue into that grey mass and seeing what that does. Okay, so this was just a sample sky with some work on clouds, you know, cumulus and then cirrus, and work on high contrast. Now, as I've been talking to you, just before I finish, the paper has been drying quite a lot, okay? But there's still a shine on there. And just as a final, you know, flourish, I'm just going to go really, really, really dark. And for this, I'm actually going to break my rule and I'm going to use Payne's Grey, which I never usually use because I feel like it's a little bit of, it's a pre-made dark, you know, and I usually like to make my own darks. But for the sake of, you know, trying something new sometimes and just having a fresh eye, I'm just going to mix this very inky Payne's Grey. It's very luscious and bluey black. And I'm going to drop it in some places. Let's just push it over the edge, you know. You might as well. Because if you don't push things over the edge, you'll never get rid of fear. And you'll never find out how brilliant something could look. You know, you never know. So I'm just putting this colour on here, again with the strong sort of diagonal thrust from top to bottom. I'm now going to tip this, if I zoom out and move away. I'm tipping it slowly, as you can see, very slowly. Let's tip it horizontally as well. Tipping it horizontally now. Now I'm going to turn it and tip it vertically again. Got a bit of a runner there, you see. So let's tip that this way, see what that does. And if nothing more, it's a lovely exercise in watching shapes emerge in your skyscape. Teaches you a lot about the mechanics of watercolour and how it, flows. See my paper is moist, it's got that gentle sheen practically all over it, so it's giving me a lovely soft blurry look. Except, see there, that's gone damp, there's hardly any shine on that, whereas that's shining. So this now is slowing down, the dampness has arrested the progress of the paint. So this again will teach you a lot about what happens when watery paint encounters damp paper. It generally won't travel any further. Okay, well I quite like that as an experiment. The sky now I feel needs that extra corner filled in, that feels wrong there, so I'm going to put that corner in and add a bit of darkness there. And finally, let's have some spatter as well. I've spattered some paint on it now. And again, once you tip it, those spatters diffuse quite gently, but they give it a little bit of zing, I think. So there we are. I'm going to stop at that point. If you've got any questions, please send me a comment or send me an email. My email is in the description. Okay, so thanks for watching. I'll be doing a simple cloud study as well in the next couple of days. Alright, so this was a basic sky process. Right, thanks for watching.